I wasn't in the court. I forgot to push the button. Man. My bad, y'all. Oh, that's good.
Oh,
It was this. I forgot to push the button. Yeah. I can't read. I don't really, it's on how to memorize all of this. So, طيب, the Qawaid al-Fiqhiyya is not a very popular subject that's taught in the Saajid. It's connected to the science of fiqh, as it says on the front of the book. So a maxim is a rule. And we should get used to not just taking words and acting like we know what they mean, but look it up. It's an English word. All you gotta do is put it in Google. What is a maxim? And it should come up exactly what a maxim is. This way, when you follow along, it makes more sense than what the person's talking about, not just this class, any class. Look up a maxim in Google and see what it pulls up. It's general. This is a general rule. Look up MAXIM if you don't have the book. This is the book. It's a small book, $6, 52 pages. Play it. So these rules are general rules connected to fiqh. And we're going to get into the definition of fiqh by the author, Sheikh. Qawaid is the plural of qaida. Qawaid, it says in the front of the book, qawaid is the plural of qaida. A qaida in Islam is a rule or a principle, right? A principle, a fundamental rule, okay? A qaida, it's the asl. A qaida could be translated as the asl, the origin of something. Right? The origin of something, the asl of something. So, for example, every building has foundations, the asl of it. Those are the qawaid of the building, or of the masjid, or whatever it is. So we got the asl of something, the origins of something else, al-fiqh. Because what the scholars do, they always define, especially when it's a two-term word, this is a compound word in English made of two words, right? And separately they have a meaning. And then when you put them together, they hold another meaning. So you have qaida, and then you have the word fiqh. Al-fiqh literally means, in the language of Arabic, to understand something. Al-fahmu. Al-fahmu. To understand something is al-fiqh. When you get into al-qawaid al-fiqhiyya, this is a science now. So when we say it's a science, that means it's almost like when you go to college, right? You go to college and you have majors and you have minors. A person might have a major in a subject and then they have a minor also. That's how big the subject is. It's not something real quick that you just learn overnight and then you become a master of it. Okay, and that's why it says this is an introduction to the science of al-qawaid al-fiqhiyya. But in this book, I think, inshallah, it's enough for what we need it to be for us, inshallah, for the general Muslim living every day. And we're going to see a lot of this stuff, a lot of the information here agrees with the intellect, because Islam is perfect. That's what we need to understand. One of the benefits of this book in understanding this science is that it shows you how Islam is perfect. Sometimes we hear that something is halal or something is haram, and we don't understand why. And we might think that the imam or the sheikh or the scholar just came up with that. How did he get that? Who said that? Where does it say that in the Quran? Where does the hadith say that? Right? So this science here, makes it a lot more relatable and understandable for the person who doesn't know the verse, who doesn't know the ayat, because it's dalil attached to these rules. These are not just rules picked out of thin air. These are rules connected to text. Okay? So this is one benefit of this science, is that it's going to show the completeness of Islam, how Islam is perfect, no stone is left unturned, everything is done for a reason. And a lot of times we're going to see, okay, mashallah, that makes sense. That just makes sense. I never knew that. I never knew Islam spoke about that, but it makes sense. So firstly, Imam Abdurrahman al-Sa'di, rahimahullah, Sheikh al-Sa'di, if you have the book, it's a nice introduction to who he is, Imam al-Sa'di. And this is on page 7. It's a short biography of him. And you can read the biography on your own, but it's enough, a few things to mention. He was born in 1307 Hijri, on the Hijri calendar, which equals 1888. And he died in 1957. 1888 to 1957. It says by the age of 8, he lost both his mother and his father. By the age of 8. His mother and his father died by the time he was 8 years old. And this is worth reading some of this. Even though it's only a page and a half, for the lack of time, I won't read all of it. It says, he began studying his studies by completing his memorization of the Quran. Imam Sa'di, rahimahullah, if you don't know, he was the teacher of who? Sheikh Al-Thamaraat, rahimahullah. Everybody knows and loves Sheikh Saajid, Sheikh Al-Thamaraat. Like his teacher was Imam Sa'di, rahimahullah, who wrote this book. It says that the Sheikh began his studies. He began his studies by completing his memorization of the Quran, which he finished by the age of 11. Which should be a benefit to us, that the beginning of knowledge is with the book of Allah, the Quran. The beginning of knowledge starts with the Quran. And many of the Salaf, when they wanted to sit in classes, the teacher, the Sheikh, would ask them, did you finish the Quran? If they said no, they would tell them, go finish the Quran and then you can come back and sit in this class. Right? Which we all know we have a lack. We don't give the Quran enough importance in our community. After he finished the Quran, that didn't make him a sheikh, because we got shuyukh all over now, mashallah. We got a bunch of sheikhs running around, right? The fact that Imam Sa'di finished the Quran, that didn't make him a sheikh. It says, after which he continued. After he memorized the Quran, he continued by studying other Islamic sciences. For example, tafsir, which is a whole science in itself, the explanation of the Quran. How is the Quran to be explained? And then he studied hadith and its sciences. Hadith is a whole other science. Meaning, this means a person could be a scholar in one of these and not a scholar in the other. A person can be a scholar of hadith, but it doesn't necessitate that his scholarship is the same level in the science of tafsir, or the science of usul al-fiqh. You understand? It says he went through and he studied hadith in the sciences. He did aqidah. He studied the aqidah. He studied usul al-fiqh. And he also did the Arabic language. It says that the Sheikh began teaching at the age of 23. 23 years old, he started teaching, right? He didn't stop learning. It says he combined both learning and teaching by spending his time reading to his teachers, or teaching his pupils, or revising and researching in the books. And this was the life of Imam Sa'di. It says until he became an imam amongst the people of knowledge. He has many books. You should read that in detail, just for the purpose of benefit. The next portion on page 9. It gives us what a maxim is, the definition of a maxim. This is from the translator. And this book, as he mentions at the bottom of page 9, on top of page 10, it said there are 5 maxims which are considered all-encompassing. Meaning, a maxim is what? A rule. And that's the word we're going to use, rule. Even though the book says maxim, we're going to say rule. It's a rule, a principle, a foundation, but we're going to just say rule. There are 5 major rules. Okay? There are 5 major rules that the ulama of Islam, the fuqaha, refer to them as al-qawaid al-kubra. The 5 major rules. But under those 5 major rules, there are other rules. Okay? And what are these rules going to do? These rules are going to help your life. It's going to be easy. It's going to make Islam, it's going to show you that Islam is a lot easier than what we think it is. And again, a lot of times things are difficult because we don't know. Because of our ignorance, it becomes difficult. If we knew, if we had more knowledge, we would see that things are a lot more easy. And that's why a lot of times you see Muslims, and you ever see somebody real upset about something that happened Islamically. They go tell somebody else, and whoever they go tell don't really see it as a problem, right? They don't really see it as a big deal, right? This person ready to lose their mind about it, and the person they go tell, like, what's the big deal? Ain't that deep? Because the person that they're talking to has knowledge of the situation. They understand that it's not as deep as you think it is, or is room to wiggle in that area. So in this book, we're dealing with those 5 major rules, even though it's going to be where on here. So let me see. Bismillah. They can't hear me, or it's not loud. Shake. It's mute. It's mute. I don't know. Let me see. It doesn't say here they can't hear me. Can you hear me? I'm just saying, I'm looking at the thing. Can you hear? Okay. Long story. Can y'all hear on there? Oh, that person says, I can't hear. I can hear you, mashallah. The brother's wrong back there. That's cool. Tayyib. We can skip why he wrote the book. Introduction, he gives praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
They said they can hear you.
Tayyib. Like what? Which follows are comprehensive fiqh maxims which apply to multiple issues which the student of knowledge will find indispensable. Tayyib. So what's going to happen, y'all? He's going to mention the qaida, the principle, and even the translation. We might have to tweak the translation because it has to make sense. We can't keep using these words and we don't know what they mean. We can make it make sense. It's okay to use synonyms. You don't have to talk like the translator talks in the book. Okay? It's okay. And I'm saying that because some people think in order to explain something, you have to say it as directly as it's translated right here. And the person you're talking to does not understand that type of language. What you talking about? Yeah. A lot of times we don't want to say we don't know, we don't understand. So a person will say, oh, okay. And they leave like, I don't know what he was talking about. But yeah. So let's look at the first qaida, the first maxim. It says maxim 1, al-qaidatul ula, al-umuru bi-maqasidiha. Actions are, as it says, all matters are considered by their intentions. All matters are considered by their intentions. What does that sound like? All matters are considered by their intentions. What does that sound like? It's not a trick question. Oh.
All matters are considered by their intentions.
Yes.
Actions based upon intentions.
Actions based upon intentions. All right. It's not. Right. That's the qaida. Where did they get that from? All right. They got it from the hadith. The hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى. Actions are only by intentions, and every man will only have what he intended. And that's why it says that this rule, this maxim, contains tremendous benefit and combines a great deal. This rule by itself covers a whole lot of areas. And that's the first rule of the major 5 rules. Because remember, it's more than 5 rules, right? But as the fuqaha, the scholars of fiqh say, the 5 major rules that we're going to deal with here. And even though these 5 major rules, they have some, we just can say, smaller rules under them. So where did they get this rule from? They got this rule from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. That actions only by intentions. Every person will have what they intended. The hadith in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Shaykh Saajid rahimahullah, he says, فَمِمَّا يَدْخُلُ تَحْتَ هَذِهِ الْقَاعِدَةِ جَمِيعَ عِبَادَةٍ. All worship. This rule applies to all worship. Clear? This rule that what? Actions are by intentions applies to any type of worship we do. All worship needs an intention. So if a person doesn't have an intention, then that worship is not going to count as worship. If a person makes wudu and they never intended in their heart to make wudu, then their wudu doesn't count. They need to make wudu again with the intention in their heart that I'm standing here at the sink or the bathtub or the wudu station to make wudu. You can't just start washing your hands and having a conversation and you wash everything with your body, but you never intended to have wudu. The wudu doesn't count, right? You can't come and pray door or stand up and the intention is not to pray door. Everything needs an intention. Now he gives examples of everything that this rule is connected to. And that's the second paragraph, or is that the third paragraph? On page 14. It says this maxim, this rule applies to all acts of worship. There is no act of worship that you don't need an intention for. There's no act of worship that you don't need an intention for. Now he gives examples of the worship. He says, minha al-wudu. When a person stands to make wudu, they need to have a niyyah for what? That they're making wudu, not to just clean off or because it's hot, it's the summer. As a person, it could possibly, a person in summertime, a person could go home, right, to take a shower, just to do what? Just to cool off, it's hot. While they're in the shower, cooling off, the intention was to take a shower to cool off. But at the same time, they wash their hands, their arms up to the elbow, they wash their hair, their face, their feet up to the ankles and all of that. They did all of that. But they did it for what reason? To cool off. If they did it to cool off, then it doesn't count as wudu. Why? Because wudu is worship. And in order for the wudu to count, to be accepted, so that they can pray, they need to make the intention for wudu. Also, tayammum. We know what tayammum is? Dry ablution. We usually say tayammum. Tayammum, people know that, but it's no word called tayammum. It's supposed to be tayammum, which is when you use the dirt, the dust to make wudu if there's no water and everything connected to that issue. Or a ghusl, as we say, a bath. A person makes a ritual bath, like on Jumu'ah, or if they're junub, right? A salat. Every prayer needs an intention. He says, fadl, al-kul wa naflu. Whether it's an obligatory prayer or a voluntary prayer, every prayer needs the intention of that prayer. So if you're going to pray Maghrib, the person needs to have the intention in their heart when they stand to pray Salat al-Maghrib. If they don't, then the Salat is not valid. The Salat is not valid without the niyyah. In that paragraph, he mentions a bunch of things that everything in that paragraph needs an intention. Giving zakat, fasting Ramadan, performing i'tikaf, praying voluntary prayers, all those things need an intention. He says here that the what is the principle? The principle goes back, or the rule goes back to all matters are considered by their intentions. It says, بمعنى حصول الثواب بهذه الأربعة يتوقف على قصد التقرب إلى الله. He said that the principle means that in order for a person to gain the reward, right? In order for the person to gain the reward, that they would have to make the intention of worship. The intention has to be for worship in order to get the reward for the prayer. It's possible that a person prays, right? Stands, and when you look at them, you look at the sister look at the brother, right? And they're praying, you wouldn't know what their intention is, right? It's possible a person just praying because they don't want nobody to say anything about them not praying. Right? And that's what they get. Nobody says anything about them not praying. But in order for the intention, in order to get the reward from Allah, the intention, the salat, or any other act of worship has to be for Allah. That they know the reward is from Allah. And that's connected to all prayers, voluntary prayers or obligatory prayers, obligatory fasting, voluntary fasting. Everything needs an intention. Clear so far? So yeah, at the top of page 15, he moves to even things, as he says, in fact, it's applicable to all permissible actions, the mubahat, the things that are not from worship. Like what? What's not worship? Name something that's not worship. Huh? Eating. Right? Eating and drinking is not an act of worship. It's something everybody does. You don't need to make an intention to get closer to Allah by eating. You just eat. You just drink. But what if a person does make the intention by eating to get closer to Allah? How does a person do that? Bismillah. That's where.
Breaking the fast?
No. Literally, a person eats this food with the intention of getting closer to Allah. How does that work?
Say to have an enemy worship later.
Jade.
Fast. I mean, yeah, it's intention. Like,
They're eating with the intention that they want to give their body strength so they can be able to stand up later at night and pray. That was the intention of them eating. You with me? Other than that, they just eat because I'm hungry. We don't eat because, man, I'm gonna eat because I gotta. No, usually generally people eat because they're hungry. I ain't eat all day, let me eat something. Right? And they eat, which is fine. We don't need an intention to eat. But we do say Bismillah, we can talk about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? But now a person goes above saying Bismillah and they say, you know what? They make an intention. They say, I'm going to eat now so that I can have a little strength so I can stand up and pray later. Right? Or what else? The example they give, I think he gives it here. Sleeping. A person goes to sleep with the intention of what? Why would a person go, huh? Getting up early to pray. You understand? In general, sleeping does not need a niyyah. We generally don't get closer to Allah by going to sleep. You go to sleep, why? Because you're tired. And that's just what it is. But now when a person adds on top of that, and this goes back to the principle. This goes back to the principle or the rule, all matters are considered by their intentions. A person goes to sleep with the intention of getting up to stand at night to worship. I'm going to get up in the middle of the night and pray tahajjud tonight, so I need to get to bed early. Instead of going to bed at 11, I'm going to bed at 9:30. Right? Do they get a reward for that intention? They get a reward for that intention. Now, what if they oversleep and they don't get up? They get rewarded for the intention. Clear?
one of my old teachers told me that a long time ago. Basically, everything in the dunya, either you connect to a battle, like that's the body. You connect to an battle, you connect to a sin based on your intentions. Because, you know, like he gave
Say that again.
Basically, everything that's moved by in the dunya, based on your intention, you connect to a benefit, you know, as a worship, or you connect to a sin based on your intention. So, you know, he gave different examples, like, you know, some people, they may go to sleep because they want to go out and party later on.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It makes sense.
Jade.
One other person may go to sleep because they want to get up earlier.
Jade. Good. That's a good example. Some people might go to sleep, right? They might want to get an afternoon nap. Why? Because they plan on going out to party later. That's why they go to sleep. They say, I need to rest up because it's on. Later on, I'm going to get up and be out all night. So they go to sleep with the intention of doing a sin. And then the deed is connected to the intention. Clear? And likewise, the person who goes to sleep in order to worship, even if they were to oversleep, the intention for them that they made was to get up for worship. In Qadarullah ma shafa'a. So on page 15, he mentions a bunch of examples of things that are permissible. These are things that are considered permissible actions. And we need to understand about the permissible actions is the permissible things, we don't need an intention in order for them to be correct. Right? Meaning you don't need an intention to eat. You just eat because you're hungry and the body needs food to drink water, right? But when a person does it, or sleeping, or any other things he mentions here, when a person does that, as he said, with a pious intention to obey Allah, and they prepare themselves to perform worship, in that case, a person receives a reward based on their intention. In that case, a person receives a reward based on their intention. Clear so far? This is the first rule. So this rule covers everything when it comes to worship. There are no exceptions. There's no worship where you don't need an intention.
You said permissible action needed attention.
Right.
Can you elaborate just shortly on that? Like,
Eating, what's permissible? Eating. You need an intention to eat.
oh, I mean,
You with me?
yeah.
Drinking,
I got lost.
right? Sleeping, you don't need an intention. You fall, sometimes you just fall asleep, you're tired, you're not even trying to sleep. So let's just say, if you say you need an intention to sleep, right? So if you sleep with no intention, what does that mean? That the sleep is not valid? Like, you understand what I'm saying? the food that you ate is not going to count, right? Now, if you sleep in order to worship later, now you connected a righteous intention to something that was generally, right, as it says, generally permissible. These generally permissible things, you don't need an intention, right? It's done and it's done. Clear? Like, and he mentions there, which is important, that a person does the permissible things, and he says they prepare themselves to actively perform worship. This is what's going to give the person the reward. So a person gets rewarded. This is the beauty of Islam. A person gets a reward for going to sleep an hour and a half early. Allah rewards a person for going to sleep an hour and a half early. Why? Because they had the intention of doing worship later. Their intention was, I'm going to get an extra hour and a half of sleep so that I can be rested and get up later on to pray to Allah. And the person will be rewarded for that intention. Allah Akbar. Tayyib. Now let's get ready to get sticky, y'all. Not sticky, but it's going to do a little more. Because I think this rule we've heard before, right? Based on the hadith, that famous hadith. Before we move to the next fa'idah, he says the benefit. He says at-turuq, which are the things وَالَّذِي يَقْصِدُ إِزَالَةُ وَالْبَرَاءَ الذَّمَّ مِنْهُ. The things that are called, as they say, they call them turuq. These are things that we want to remove, right? And they don't necessarily need an intention. They don't need an intention. For example, the example he gives here, he says, كَإِزَالَةِ النَّجَاسَةِ مِنَ الْبَدَنِ. Making istinja, right? Making istinja. Does making istinja need an intention? Huh? What would you say? Or cleaning off some urine from your throat. Is this number one? Number one, we have to say, look, is making istinja, cleaning your throat off and preparing for this, is that worship? Yeah. It's worship, right? But what if a person didn't make the intention before making the istinja? Does the istinja count? Why does it count? They didn't make an intention in this worship. And we just said all worship needs a niyyah. Now you're gonna tell me you can make istinja and you don't need a niyyah? Or you can clean urine off your clothes without an intention and it still counts? You with me? It's a section. These are a section of things that the scholars refer to as at-turuq. And basically, these are things that they don't need an intention. Why? Because whether you made your niyyah for istinja or not, when you cleaned yourself off, did you reach the goal of being clean? The goal is reached regardless. Clear? The goal is reached in that case regardless. When you cleaned your clothes off, your shirt or your throat or your body, whatever you cleaned off, right? You cleaned it off in order to remove it, right? without the intention. The goal was to do what? Remove the filth. And that's what you did, remove the filth. And they say that that is enough. طيب. Lastly, in the chapter of, or the section dealing with the niyyah, and this is important, y'all, that the niyyah has two levels. The niyyah has two levels. طيب. Every intention, or the intentions that we make have levels, their own levels. The first level is tamyiz al-'ada an al-ibadah. And this is what the niyyah is used for. This is what the niyyah is for. The intention, it distinguishes worship from just a customary practice. It distinguishes worship from something that's just a habit that you do. Clear? Anybody got an example? That the intention distinguishes your habit from worship. It distinguishes a habit from worship. Because worship could look like something that you do every day just as a habit. Right? It's possible. Everybody clear? But what's going to distinguish the point? Am I getting a reward from Allah or not? The niyyah. Like what? Huh? Praying? Like praying. Oh.
Praying don't have no intention.
A habit that you do, right? If we use a salat, that's kind of difficult that a person gets up every day and doesn't make the intention. What's possible that we do as a habit, a person could do as a habit, and it looks like worship. But in reality, it's not worship because they didn't have the intention for worship. Brushing the teeth? How?
Brush the teeth, maybe with your mouth is smell clean. So just put it in like that. I'm saying if somebody just wake up, brush their teeth on the patch. Somebody wake up, brush their teeth. Attention,
MashaAllah. Later, we said a person brushes their teeth, right? Everybody brushes their teeth out of habit. But who gets up with the intention when they brush their teeth, right? Based on the use of the siwak, and the mouth smelling good when you go to the masjid, and the mouth smelling good before you read the Quran, and everything, all the reasons from the sunnah to use siwak, right? That a person gets up and does the habit, but when they get up to do their habit, they make the intention of worship. Everybody clear? Or some people, they on a kick, right? They don't eat until sundown. Why they do it? Yeah, it's a habit, but why are they doing it? Why do people not eat during the day? Not on a habit tip. They're trying to lose weight, or they're trying to regulate their weight, whatever they're trying to do, right? So they make it a habit to eat once a day. They say, no, I'm gonna just eat once a day. When I'm at work, I'm not gonna eat anything. I'm just wait till I get home. And if you look at them, it looks like it would seem as if they're fasting, right? But it's not. It's habit. They don't eat till the sun goes down, just like when we fast. They don't eat till Maghrib, right? That's a habit. It has nothing to do with worship. It has to do with my weight, my health, and all of that. Anything that's connected to whatever reason they're doing it. But now they apply the intention. They apply this first rule, right? The first rule, all matters are considered by their intentions. They apply this now to them not eating. Now my point of not eating is because I'm fasting. I'm going to make this worship now. You see how the niyyah changes it from a habit to worship. That's what the intention does. Everybody clear? That's one of the things that the intention does. Clear? طيب. The next thing that the intention does is that tamyiz al-ibadat ba'daha min ba'd. That the intention distinguishes different worship from other worship. This is getting on my nerves. I gotta move this. I'm sorry. I can't see the shades. The intention is what separates one type of worship from another type of worship. So, for example, Salat al-Dhuhr and Salat al-Asr, they look exactly the same, right? They pray exactly the same. 4 rakat, 2 rakat, make tashahhud, 2 rakat, salam out. Tashahhud, salam out, right? Like, how do you know if a person comes in the masjid and they pray 4 rakat, right? And it's after Asr. They come in the masjid and they pray 4 rakat. Asr right now is at 5 o'clock. They come in the masjid at 6:30, or a sister comes in the masjid at 6:30, you sitting there and she prays 4 rakat. The assumption is that she's praying what? Asr. That's the assumption. Why is that the assumption? Because it's time for Asr. But how do you know if she's not praying Dhuhr? How would you know if she's praying Dhuhr or Asr? You don't know by looking at them because they look the same, right? The only thing that's going to distinguish if she's praying Dhuhr or Asr is her intention. And that's what the intention does. When worship looks the same, it has the same sort of the same picture, right? The only way you know that is if it's obligatory or if it's, for example, Dhuhr or Asr is based on the intention, based on the intention. If she or he intended that it was Dhuhr, then they're praying Dhuhr, whether you think it's Asr or not. You sitting there watching them pray, and you think they're praying Asr, right? And in reality, they're praying Dhuhr. Clear? Now my question is, why would somebody be coming in at the time of Asr and they're praying Dhuhr? They might have a valid excuse. They could have overslept, right? They could have forgot. They could have been at work and they forgot to pray. Clear? There are valid excuses, y'all. You know how we do.
Shout out.
You shout out. If you ain't pray on time, you shout out. So they might have woke up. They might have just woke up and forgot. They say, well, they said, man, let me stop and pray. I ain't prayed Dhuhr. So those are two things that the niyyah does, that the niyyah distinguishes something from being obligatory from something being or not obligatory. It could be obligatory and it could be recommended, or two obligatory things. Like Dhuhr and Asr are both obligatory. The only thing that distinguishes the two is the intention. It's possible that the niyyah distinguishes between something that is obligatory and something that is recommended. Like what? The intention. We said Dhuhr and Asr are both obligatory. The only thing that separates them from the two that we know which is because what? The intention of the person. The person looking doesn't know. We assume, oh, it's Asr, they must be praying Asr. Now let's take it another step. Now it's possible that the intention distinguishes between something that is obligatory and something that is sunnah, recommended. Like what? What's sunnah prayer? The 2 rakat before Fajr are what? Recommended, sunnah. Okay? And? Huh? There you go. Fajr is obligatory, and Fajr is 2 rakats, right? The 2 rakat before Fajr are sunnah, but they're also 2 rakat. If you look at a person praying, they look exactly the same, right? They look exactly the same. The assumption is when a person comes in that they're praying, huh? What's the assumption? If we pray Fajr at 4:30, a brother or sister comes in and they pray 2 rakat at 4:15, we assume they're praying what? The sunnah. We assume they're praying their sunnahs for Fajr, right? Like, next level. It's possible that the intention, we said between two things that are obligatory, Dhuhr and Asr, they look the same. We said something that is obligatory and something that is recommended. Like Salat al-Fajr is obligatory, and the 2 rakats for Salat al-Fajr are recommended, sunnah, right? Or the intention could distinguish between two things that are recommended. That's why this never leaves us. These qawaid, these rules never leave. If you get them now, they stick with you the rest of your life. They never leave. So don't think that it's just, we're just talking. They're going to be applicable through life every day. What are two things that look the same? They're both voluntary, but you wouldn't know which one they're doing except by the intention. You said? Two things, they're both sunnah, they're both recommended. The only way to distinguish is by the intention. Without the intention, they look the same. Huh? You gotta explain. Go slow. That's
For like Yom Kippur. Some people make. That's a bad example. I mean, it's a good example. It's a bad. I don't feel like explaining it.
Go ahead.
Some people making it for, you know what I mean, just to, you know what I mean, they can clean it up for the just to move. You know what I mean? Somehow people do it for, you know what I mean, actually going to war.
We want two things that are sunnah, two things that are recommended. Because the ghusl to janaba is obligatory.
That's good.
Really? Two things that are recommended. They look the same. The only thing that distinguishes the two is the person's intention. Any sisters over there? I wouldn't be able to hear y'all sisters anyway because the AC running. Sorry. Huh? If you say fasting, how?
Somebody fasting, like Monday or Thursday. Or somebody's fasting.
Huh? Say for example, right? Say for example, we pray Fajr at 4:20. Somebody comes in at 4:10, right? They enter the masjid at 4:10, and they pray what? They pray 2 rak'ah. What are they praying? They're not praying Qiyam al-Layl at 4:10. Hold up, the heathen. So we pray. No, the Fajr is already in. We pray at 4:20. They come in the masjid at 4:10 and pray 2 rak'ah. What could they possibly be praying? Sunnahs for entering the masjid, tahiyyat to the masjid, right? They could be praying 2 rak'ahs for entering the masjid, or they could be praying 2 rak'ahs for Fajr. They both look the same. Both of them are sunnah recommended. The only way you would know which one a person is praying is by what? The intention. Or if they told you, no, I was just praying that for entering the masjid, I'm praying my sunnahs now. My 2 sunnahs. You understand? This is what the intention does. Al-umur bi maqasidiha, the first rule, that all matters are considered by their intention. And sometimes people want to do what? They want to combine the 2 in 1. So they want to come in the masjid and pray 2 and say, you know what? That 2 was for my Fajr and entering the masjid. I ain't getting into that. I'm just saying. I'm not getting into that. All I'm saying is, the only way you would know what a person prayed is by the intention. The intention is what separates the 2 recommended things. Everybody clear? So the intention could distinguish between 2 things that are obligatory, or between something that is obligatory and something that is recommended sunnah, or it could distinguish between 2 things that are sunnah, 2 things that are recommended. So he says, he says also another level of the intention is ikhlas, being sincere. Right? Because a person, for example, yes, a person made the intention to make dhuhr. So what do they get ready to pray? Dhuhr, that's what they made the intention for. Right? But now on top of that, a person has to have what? Ikhlas. They have to be sincere. They're praying for Allah's reward. They're not praying because my wife looking at me, she's gonna grind me up if I don't pray dhuhr all the time. I'm gonna just pray to get her off my back. Right? Or sister prays because she know her husband comes in and she gonna have to wait till you come in at 2, I'm gonna start praying at 56, 55. As soon as they come in, they can see me praying. You gotta be careful, man. You don't wanna, you know what I'm saying? But he says that the niyyah, ikhlas for qadr az-zad an mujarrad niyyat nafs al-amal. He said that ikhlas is a little more on the fact that we already made the intention. I make my niyyah that I'm going to pray Salat al-Isha. That's what I'm praying. Because Salat al-Isha is how many rak'ah? 4 rak'ah. But Dhuhr is also 4, Asr is 4, and Isha is 4. We have 3 prayers that look exactly the same. Looking. If you were standing from afar looking at somebody, and you saw him praying 4 rak'ah, you would assume based on the time, right? So now I make my intention to pray Isha. I'm not praying Dhuhr or Asr. I'm praying. On top of that, I need to make sure my intention is for Allah only. Clear? Not that I'm just praying Isha, but that I'm praying Isha and my rewards with Allah. Tayyib? Clear? Tayyib. Any questions so far? Again, y'all, all of this is summarized. This is a whole science in itself, right? But we're not going to do it like that. But inshallah, will be enough to see the benefit of the qawaid. Tayyib. Clear? Tayyib. Let's look at the second qaida, which is on page 16. Al-Qaida al-Thaniya. It says, وَيَدْخُلُ تَحْتَهَا ثَلَاثَ قَوَاعِدَ. It says the second principle the second rule has actually 3 rules under it. It's a rule that has 3 rules. 3 rules under it. We probably won't get all 3 of them done, but that's like it says أحدها الضرورات تبيح المحظورات. Maxim 2 is comprised of 3 sub-maxims. We said a maxim is what? A principle or a rule. So the second rule has 3 rules under it, 3 sub-rules. It says, number 1, necessities legalize prohibitions. Necessities legalize prohibitions. Go ahead. This is a good one, y'all. These rules show Islam is perfect. A lot of times we tripping over our feet because we don't learn these basic rules connected to our deen, and we make life harder in all like in every aspect as Muslims. Like necessities legalize prohibitions. What does that sound like it means? A necessity legalize a prohibition. Yeah.
Like if it's something that we know is halal, there's a necessity, for example, to sustain life. Basically, to do that enough to sustain life.
Jade. If something is haram, the Muslim is not allowed to do it. But in this case, in the situation that they're in, it's a necessity. In that case, they're able to do what is still haram. It's haram. It's not like Islam made it legal. In this specific case, it's allowed for that person in that situation. Right? And he's going to bring some examples. Like he says, إذا اضطر مكلف لفعل محرم بأن خاف على نفسه إن لم يفعله الضرر. If a person is mukallaf, as it says there, the sane, mature Muslim who is responsible for carrying out Islamic duties. A person is reached the age of puberty, like I said, a person reached the age of puberty, number 1, and a person, number 2, has their sanity. Right? That means they're mukallaf. That means they're responsible Islamically for their actions. That they reach the age of puberty and that they have their sanity, they're responsible for their actions. If this person here is forced to do something that is haram because they fear, if they don't, there's going to be some harm done to them if they don't do it. It says, in this case, it becomes legal, mubah, for him, for that person. Why is that? The ayat, where Allah says, وَمَا جَعْلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Allah, and He has not laid upon you in religion any hardship. Allah has not put any hardship on you in this religion. What is He talking about? In this case, y'all, what does it look like? A person don't have a choice. Let's just use, He's going to bring some examples. As He says on page 17, there are innumerable scenarios, right? So let's just use, for example, because we all know Muslims are not allowed to eat pork. Right? It's haram. A person will be selling drugs, smoking weed, and they'll say, I don't eat no pork though. Right? That's what I ain't gonna do. That joint got gelatin in it. You know what I'm saying? We all know we can't eat pork, right? Well, a person might kill somebody, but they won't eat pork. Is that deep? Well, like, a person knows that we're not allowed to eat pork, right? But in this case, this is an extreme case, y'all. This is extreme. Like, it's nothing to eat. The person's on the verge of starving to death. We're not worried about, well, who starved? Like, no. You never know what the situation is. We're talking a real situation happens. The person has nothing to eat, and the person on the verge of starving. Or a person has a sickness, they have to eat something to take medicine. It's a real situation. The only thing available to eat is something that has pork in it. Clear? It says what? They fear if they don't eat that has the pork in it, is going to cause more harm to them. This means they're in the case of what? Necessity. Can they eat the pork, or do they just die? They can eat the pork. In that case, specifically in that situation, they're allowed to eat the pork. How much pork do they eat? Just enough to stay alive, take them out, whatever they need to do. It's not like it's open season now. I'm gonna knock this whole joint off because the brother said, the brother was saying necessities legalize prohibitions. No, it's another rule coming that's gonna regulate how much of the pork we can eat. It's another rule connected to that, right? This is one rule. Can a person eat the pork? They can eat the pork. Yes.
That's a side question.
Oh.
Same as you don't eat pork, go right and pass away.
Mm.
Is it a sinful at that point in time? Side of Allah?
If a person doesn't eat the pork, if a person doesn't eat the pork and they kill themselves, it depends. It depends. He said if a person doesn't eat the pork and they end up dying, is that person sinful for not eating the pork? And they're allowed to eat the pork in that case? Aha. What if the person didn't know you can eat pork in this situation? What if a person doesn't know this principle? Nah, shit, nah. Some people, man, everybody don't. We assume everybody know. You can say that based on what you know as a Muslim today. But if somebody else, a different person, had no idea nothing about that, we can't eat no pork. And for you to come and say we can eat pork is crazy to me. Right now, you got to explain to them why you can eat pork. So a person dies like that, Allahu Ta'ala. I think it would depend. If a person knows this, then the question is this. Let's rephrase the question. If a person is in that situation, the only thing available is to eat pork. Is it obligatory for them to eat that pork to sustain life? Or is it allowed for that person to eat the pork to sustain life?
Allowed.
Like, if we say it's allowed, then that means they don't have to eat it. And that means they could die. Right? If you say it's allowed. If you say it's obligatory for them to eat the pork, and that's the only thing there, and if you don't eat it, you're going to die, you say, so you have to eat it, it's obligatory. If it's obligatory and they don't eat it, and they know that they have to eat it, then that's sinful. To leave something off that is an obligation knowingly is a sin. Clear? So it's going to depend on the person. Allahu Ta'ala. Okay, so those three verses on page 16 and 17 are the proof that they use in this case that what? Something is haram. Where it says a prohibition, they're trying to say something is haram. The prohibition is haram here in the English. It says legalized. It's allowed. Right? And the first one is necessity. So the example is, as we're going to come on the next page, that when a necessity comes, it allows you to do that which is generally not allowed to do in Islam. Now, of course, there's restrictions on it, and those restrictions are going to come a little later. This is just the first qaida. As remember, he said under this one, there's three of them, right? It's the first one. Like the second verse says, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمْ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمْ الْعُسْرَ. Allah intends for you ease. Allah wants something easy for you. And he doesn't want to make things difficult for you. So the ulama derive from that, they say, well, in this case, that would be the proof to say, listen, it's a hardship right now. There's nothing else to eat. Only thing to eat is the pork. I'm sorry, sister. The brother's coming back. You want to turn this camera on? I can't hear it. This one. Huh? Well, the brother's coming because I can't. Shut up with the John. A necessity? What is a necessity? Good question. MashaAllah. Nah, can you turn this off? That's an excellent question. What is a necessity? Because we can't give, don't think that Islam just give you the green light to start doing the haram. It's not like that. And the scholars discuss what is a necessity? What is a darura? There's going to be some harm coming behind it. You're going to harm yourself. Some people take medication, right? And therefore, taking that medication, they don't even fast on Ramadan. Because they know the harm coming behind it if they don't eat and take that medication. Right? Now, the thing about necessity is necessity could vary from one person to the next. What's a necessity for me is not necessarily a necessity for everybody in the room. What's a necessity for you, sister, is not a necessity for the sister next to you. Right? So it's not a blanket type of thing. The word necessity is not blanket. It's not everybody has the same needs. Everybody's different. Right? And everybody has to fear Allah because it don't matter what we do in front of each other. Allah knows the intention of the person in the heart. Clear? And there are researches done by the scholars of Islam just on what is the necessity. What's the darura? How do we know something is necessity or not? Saajid? I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't clarify that. Yeah. That's good because it's important. It's important. A sister might have a necessity, and none of the other sisters sitting next to her have the same necessity. It's not a necessity to them, but it is to her. Now, how you want to come and tell a person that's not a necessity? It's difficult to do that. It's difficult for you to walk up to a person and tell them that ain't no necessity. How you do that based on their situation and their life, what they're facing. Unless it's something like, that we all face from hardship. Some things, y'all, also, some things in our deen, if there's a certain amount of hardship that we're supposed to encounter. It's a certain amount of hardship that we're supposed to face in our deen. It's not like everything's supposed to be easy. No. When we fast, everybody's hungry. We all hungry. We ain't eating 14 hours. We're supposed to be hungry. It's life. It's like we human. You can't break your fast. I was just hungry. It was necessary. I had to break. No, that's part of the hardship that comes with it. Salatul Fajr. It's a hardship of getting up in the morning. Right? The rest of the world sleep. Right? Especially now. Salat is early. 3:55 the event. Only people getting up is people getting up, they walking dogs, y'all. They get up at 3:30 to walk a dog. Allah protect us. We getting up to pray. It's not easy, but that hardship that comes with that is it's supposed to be there. So there's a level of difficulty in our deen that we're supposed to encounter. And that's the jihad of nafs. That's why we fight against ourselves to get over that hump. It's not like everything's supposed to be easy. Allah says he wants ease for you. No, this ease because you get ready to die. Right? This ease, you in a situation, you ready to cause a huge, like a serious problem for yourself. Right? So in that case, in everybody's situation, could vary. Everybody clear? And that by itself, necessity by itself, that's a whole discussion in itself, which we don't have time for that. Tayyib. He says, included in this, as he says on page 17, such as eating. You see that word? Does anybody have a book? I know everybody got a phone, right?
I want to buy a book. We got some.
You got some books? Oh yeah, we do that. We got books.
I spent $6. Huh?
Listen, everybody got a phone, right? Because I want to. This is the word Carrion. Yeah, what is that? Without looking it up. I mean, we want everybody to look it up, but Carrion, because you know we do. We sitting at home reading a book.
I know what
C-A-R.
Carrion. Anybody know without looking it up?
Roadkill.
Huh?
Roadkill.
Roadkill. There you go. But look it up anyway. Carrion. It says here there are numerous scenarios with a master plan. It says such as eating, right? if we sitting home and we reading this and we don't understand the word, we got to get used to looking up words, y'all. We got Google. It ain't like you got to go grab a whole Webster's dictionary. You understand? Google it, make it clear, it's easy, and now you know what you're looking at. Is it allowed, first of all, y'all, is it allowed to eat roadkill? Right? Huh? Why not?
It's not a necessity.
Why is it not allowed to eat? For example, you riding down the highway, they transporting animals, a nice lamb falls off the truck, gets hit by a car, and now it's dead on the road. Because down south, they grab them, John, strap them to the roof, and take them home, skin them, and barbecue them. Are we allowed to eat that roadkill as Muslims? No. Why not?
Slaughter died from falling blow.
Huh?
Fall. Died from fall.
I wasn't slaughtered in the name of Allah.
It wasn't slaughtered,
It wasn't slaughtered.
right? It's considered to be meta. Meta. So roadkill that wasn't slaughtered, it just died. It got hit by a car. It fell off a truck and got ran over. Yeah, it's dead. Yeah, it's free. Can we eat it? It's not allowed. Islamically, it's not allowed to eat. Clear? So he says this example, this rule here applies. What if you're in a situation, the only thing available to eat is that roadkill? In that case, you're allowed to eat that roadkill to what? Keep yourself alive. Clear?
I would.
You wouldn't?
No,
Ah,
I
good.
said I would. I wanted to
You
ask
wait.
a question.
I thought you said I wouldn't. And that's a good one. Because if you would or would not is not the issue, y'all. Because say if it's two of y'all, only thing to eat is that dead lamb that fell off the truck. The person you with says, man, I'm applying the qaida. Huh? Necessities, legalized prohibitions. We've been out here for 2.5 days. I'm about to check. I'm eating this, y'all. You say, no, I'm cool. I'm not eating it. Can you blame the person who eats it? You can't blame them, even though it might not be necessity to you at this point. You might got another 6 hours or 8 hours in you. But this person feel like they don't. You understand? So in that case, to them it's a necessity at that point, and to you it may not be. Clear? He says after that, drinking impure water and other things. Water that has najis in it. I know we heard this before. Sometimes people, they stranded in the woods. They say, well, how you survive? You say, I had to drink my own urine. Would you do it or not is not the issue. Is it allowed to drink urine? No, urine is najis. Right? Urine is Islamically filthy. You can't even pray if you got urine on your clothes. You can't even pray until you clean the urine off your clothes. And that's the benefit of making it stinjat. So that even the underwear, the underclothes have to be clean from filth before we pray. So if a person is praying and they're not making it stinjat, then that means they have filth on their clothing, even if it's the underclothes. Can you pray with that filth on your underclothes? Nah. Let alone drink water that has najis in it, urine. A person stranded in the woods, right? What was that? I forgot that show. They were stranded in the woods or something. One of them Jones. They stranded in the woods. But if they doing it as a game, that's, you know what I'm saying? That's, well, it's a game. Like you gaming out there, but it might get real like that. Anyway, regardless, a person stranded in the woods, nothing to eat or drink. So what do? They turn to urine, right? They turn to urine. They thinking that that's the only thing that's going to help them. Is it allowed Islamically to drink your own urine? No. In this case, extreme cases, and that's why I said drinking impure water and other things. In this case, a person will be allowed to do that based on that situation. Remember, y'all, we don't leave here and say, sisters, y'all with me? Sisters, you with me? We don't leave here tonight and say Muslims can eat pork. That's not what we're saying. Islam doesn't say Muslims can eat pork. Everybody understand that? That's the exception. That's a rule that is an exception in a dire case of necessity. Everybody clear? So nobody walks around saying living, and that's part of our problem. Part of our problem now is we're living by the exception and not living by the rule. The rule is that pork is haram. Muslims are not allowed to eat pork. That's the rule. So we don't walk around and say, well, Muslims can eat pork. What if somebody said, wicked? Man, just say you stranded on the island. It's only you and one other person. No, that's the exception. We don't live by that. We live by the rule. If that exception comes up, then this is the case that we apply what we're looking at, which shows the mercy and the benefit of knowing our deen in the smell. Is that the name? طيب. طيب. We'll stop there, inshallah. If there's any questions? Sister, got questions? Fellow sister. Hold on, sis. Brother coming back because they got the fans running and all that. Say that again? Yeah. I'm sorry, sis. Come close on like right where y'all wall is. He just turned the fans off. Say it again.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. The example that the thing is, when we talk about taking on the law of another, I had a question about it. From entity or you want to the family?
What page you on?
Page 17.
Okay.
And it says, whoever can help to take the law of another.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna do that next week. Yeah, I see it. Likewise, whoever is compelled to take the wealth of another, such as in the form of food or otherwise, it is permissible to take it without the permission or agreement of its owner, except in the case when it will harm its owner. That's a whole issue, y'all. It's an issue. Don't ever think that any of these principles allow us to oppress anybody else. And that's why a lot of times, if you go to the bookstore, it's a lot of books translated. But even though they translated, there are a lot of books that need explanation. Even though they translated, they need to be explained. They need to be put in context. If you leave it like that, you can go take somebody's stuff. And of course, that goes against the basic Islamic etiquette. Basic Islamic rules that everybody's property is sacred. You can't just take somebody's property, right? Is there a time when you're allowed to take somebody's property without asking them? Possibly. Is that the rule we live by as Muslims? No. The rule we live by as Muslims is that everybody's property is sacred. Haram to take it. That's the rule. Now, when it becomes allowable to take it without somebody knowing is a specific case. Then you see where they put it, right? They put it under the qaida, under the rule, necessities, legalized prohibitions. And we're gonna do that next week though, inshallah. Yeah, we're gonna finish this. I get what you're saying. We're gonna finish these examples before we go to the next rule system. Clear? Any other questions? Oh. Go ahead. Pay attention. Oh, there's a difference between meat being killed by a person and meat dying. There's a difference between meat being killed by a person and meat dying. Okay? Meaning, a person could kill meat. When a person kills meat, right? That's called slaughtering. Now, it's a correct way to slaughter, and it's an incorrect way to slaughter. But when a person does it, it's slaughtering. When an animal falls off a truck and get hit by a car behind it, that's not slaughtering. That's roadkill. Okay? That means it wasn't slaughtered at all. You with me? Now, we're not talking about the slaughtering meat. We're talking about just dead meat on the road. Meta. Right? It's called meta. And Allah prohibited us from eating meta in the Quran. He prohibited us from eating. It's not, I'm using roadkill as an example, y'all. That's not the only meta, okay? This is just an example. There are other ways that food is considered meta. It's dead, but we can't eat it, okay? The example we're using right now is the roadkill, okay? In this case, that roadkill is dead. Nobody slaughtered it at all. There's no debate about if it was even slaughtered. It just fell off the truck and got hit by a car. That's not slaughtering, okay? So in this case, we can't eat roadkill, right? Because it's meta. It's considered carcass, right? The dead carcass that was not slaughtered. So we can't eat that. But in the case, that's the last thing available for us to eat is 2 people or 3 people. Somebody, they on their last leg. They say they want to eat that. In this case, are they Islamically allowed to eat it? They can eat it in that case. Clear? But we don't walk around now saying it's allowed for Muslims to eat roadkill. Don't take any of these principles and flip them and use them as the rule. All right? That's the exception. And we don't live by the exception. We live by the rule, the asl, the qaida in Islam. And these are exceptions. And these exceptions make our lives as Muslims easier. And it's going to get, they're very applicable in everyday life. Right now, we're talking about these things might sound kind of, extreme. You're in the middle of nowhere. Okay, but it's coming. And that's why she said, what about down here? Whoever's compelled to take the wealth. Let me ask you, sister, is there a specific situation that you know something like that happened? About taking the wealth without asking? Possibly, yeah. I've heard situations the sister say the brother not taking care of her. Can he take from her money? Can she take from his money? Right? It's a lot of rules. It's applicable. You just got to understand how they apply. Everything is not open season when you hear these. Okay, they have to be regulated and used responsibly. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everybody's intention when they do it. Any other questions?
These are 5 maxims agreed upon in all the 4 methods, right?
These are 5 maxims agreed upon.
And all the 4 methods.
Allah. I don't want to say the word agreed upon. Allah.
Majority, right? Not more.
Yeah, it's a lot of them. These are the 5 major ones. You may can use the word agreed upon, Allah. But this science in itself has a lot of khilaf in it.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? So I just want to be careful using the words about agreed upon, and because it's a lot of different.
It's funny you said that because I was recently listening to something from Sheikh Hussein, and the young student asked him, he said, this is the understanding of such and such meaning Imam Shafi. So, Sheikh Hussein goes and said, because they was explaining the Sunnah. He said, blah, 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 Sunnah on the top of these and the understanding of Sahaba. He said, basically, he was asking, well, who do you need to verify?
Right.
Who do you need to say that this is? He said, Allah, His Messenger, Sunnah the Prophet.
Well, you'd be surprised, man. So we in a bad
They
situation.
wanted more. They wanted more. Like, yo,
We in a bad situation.
Well, no, but this is a little different though, because this is
It's a fiqh issue.
yeah, slang. This is something that, you know what I mean. I'm just asking because
It's a lot of khilaf. It's a lot of different amongst the scholars in the science. A lot of it is on even when it comes down to the definitions. Even the definition, we're not gonna do all that because it'd be overkill. They differ on the definition. You know what I'm saying? So
the majority of Saudi Arabia is upon the understanding of Imam Ahmed, though, right?
yeah.
Right, yeah.
The majority of the scholars in Saudi is taking the positions from Imam Ahmed.
Alhamdulillah.
Because he was in that Memlaka, or he was teaching in that area.
Mhm.
Iraq.
In Mecca,
Yeah.
right?
No.
Iraq.
That's a different class, Shay. You can't do that, man.
I'm sorry.
No, the reason why I asked those
Because sometimes you gotta become like that.
That's not the reason,
The reason
but
why I'm asking, but these principles,
That's not the reason.
all these principles have proof, but they differ on some of the principles. I just want to know if those particular 5 was an agreement upon the method.
yeah.
That's all.
Some خلاص. Thank you. Any other questions before we start? We're finished there on page 17 until next week. Inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.